Do you think you could do an Ironman later in life? How about 7? My guest today, Will Matthews, has done 7 Ironmans. And not only that, he left a lucrative corporate career to start his own company. We'll dive into both of these things in today's interview. Hello, dreamers. Welcome to the Late Starters Club, giving you the inspiration, mindset, and tools you need to start something midlife and beyond. Remember, it's never too late to follow your dreams. Hello, Late Starters. It's your host, Andrea Vall, and I am here with the amazing Will Matthews, who is like a 7-time Ironman competitor, which is amazing. Later in life, just got started doing Ironmans later in life. And I'll give you your full intro in a second, but I just want to say welcome, Will.
Hey, Andrew, so happy to be here. Thanks for having me on board.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to share a little bit of your story because I love the things you've done here. So Will has left a lucrative corporate leadership role at the age of 47 to open his professional development company, Matthews Performance Group. So that already is starting a brand new thing later in life in your later 40s. But then also, you competed in your first triathlon, followed that with your first Ironman 2 months later. I can't believe you went from triathlon to Ironman in that short a time, and now you've competed in 7 Ironman competitions, and this year became the first Colorado state champion in your age group. That is so cool. So cool. And he's got a book called You've Got This: 5 Keys You Need to Live Boldly and Accomplish Anything. And it's talking about resilience and reinvention, which is what we're talking about on this podcast. So I knew that you had to be on this podcast when we started talking about all this. Will is a high content keynote speaker with a motivational and inspirational style, and we'll get into some of that too. So, yes, re welcoming you, Will.
Andrew, great. It's super great to be here.
I
Hey,
know.
late starters, you kidding me? That is such, I love what your work is all about and the
Yeah.
message and the encouragement that you provide for sure.
Yeah, it's been so fun. It's just been such an inspiration for me. As most people know, my main business is Facebook advertising, and I thought, I don't want to start a podcast about this, that. I was just wanted something that I was super passionate about, which is the whole message that you can do anything later in life, even compete in Ironman. So that's so cool. So what got you started with the triathlon? What was the motivation there to get started with that?
Yeah, great point. I've always been, not always, since high school, later high school, I've been a fairly athletic kind of guy. I'd like to test my limits that way. And I'd done a fair number of uh, marathons and things like that. Then I got that nuisance tap on the shoulder, like, all right,
Mhm.
you've done it. Are you gonna go do more of those? Maybe, but that tap on the shoulder was okay. All right, Matthews, what's next? And the first thing I
Mhm.
heard was Iron Man. I'm like, oh no, I don't want to hear that because Iron crazy. It's a crazy distance. It's a crazy training regimen. But I listened to that tap, the tap we always get, right? We feel that nudge to go do something different. And we either follow that nudge or we push it back or we maybe someday. So that's what drove me into that. And starting, yeah, later in life, you can see the little gray hair here. And starting that out, and really, it's just been a fascinating journey, metaphorical toward the kind of stuff we
Yeah.
can all do whatever we want. We get to reinvent.
Right. I love it. I love it. So remind our listeners and myself, I always get mixed up on the distances. So what is the Ironman distance for all of those events?
Yeah, yeah. So Ironman, the Ironman distance is you start off with a 2.4-mile swim. Typically, it's in open water like ocean or a big lake or something. So 2.4-mile swim, and then 112 miles on the bike. And then following that with a full marathon. So the full marathon is 26.2 miles. So it's a long day to say the least.
Oh my gosh. That is just crazy. And so how long does it take you to train for that? How long are you just in constant training? 7, you're probably doing are you doing 1 a year? What do you wha
Yep, exactly. One a year. And so the training for me, I love to ski. I'm one of those, like all of us, we like to do a lot of different things where we have a lot of demands. And I love to ski. I love the winter sports. And so I start usually right in March. And then I try to find one. I triathlon or an Ironman to do. It's more like August, September,
Uh-huh.
October timeframe. So I kind of train all summer.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you just won the Colorado State champion. That just happened here recently, right?
That was in August, yeah, and to be clear,
August.
the state championship and that I'm the state championship for the or state champion for the Olympic distance. So for clarity for everybody, Ironman's this one, but the Olympic
Okay.
distance is different than that, but yeah, it was fun
Okay.
to stand on top of the podium. That was great.
That is so cool. That is so cool. I love it. Love it. Yeah. So has there been any hardships along the way with training? Have you gotten injured or are there any things that have unexpected obstacles that have come up during your training?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just a constant thing, and I really do think, Andrew, is I look at it as a metaphor. Again, you look at what it takes to train, and as an example, to answer your direct question, yeah, I've had Achilles heel, not full tears, but damage, and what you do when you have that, you can't run at all. You have to just let it heal and
Mhm.
not get diverted and not quit, but just say, "Okay, I have to be smart about this and let that heal up." I mean, different things like that. Thankfully, my knees are bulletproof so far. A lot of people have health but there's always something that gets in their way, especially sometimes life.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other things that it's sometimes not always easy to go say, "Hey, I'll be back. I'm gonna go do a 6-hour bike ride, then I'll be back. Oh, by the way, I'm gonna be totally exhausted for the rest of the day too."
Yeah. I know, that's the thing is it's not just a quick little bit of exercise in the morning that you're doing, like, a whole weekend is probably dedicated to that, and you gotta eat right, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Wow.
there are a lot of things emotionally, mentally, physically that something like this really does test in the process.
So what has driven you to do this multiple times? What keeps you going? Why has it not been like a one and done check the box? What is it about this that keeps you, hooked in and doing it over and over?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It becomes a bit of a lifestyle, really.
Mhm.
Right now, I'm out of season now, I'm complete for the year. And I can tell you, and maybe if everybody else can relate to this, sometimes it's if I don't have a goal, if I don't have something that I'm working toward, for me, wow, it can be a little difficult to get to the gym. It can get a little bit
Uh-huh.
difficult to do the kind of things it takes to keep preparing. So for me, it's wow, it took a lot to get to that level of physical endurance and so forth. And I don't want to lose that. I want the next
Mm,
stage of my life to be the best stage of my life. And I think to do
yeah.
that, you have to be strong physically to the extent that you're capable.
Yeah, for sure. I think that makes a huge difference with your attitude and energy and everything, right? It just trickles down into everything, into mindset and all that type of things. Yeah, so I also do want to get into you, especially like you've made these big changes with the activities you're doing, the competitions you're doing, you made big changes with starting your own company. And what do you think it really takes to make big changes? And I know you basically focus on this with your content, so I'd love to hear more about your philosophies there.
Yeah. Well, great question. And again, I'm looking at the logo here, Late Starters Club. I think there's a couple ways we can navigate life. And one of those is to anchor in and say, okay, I've got a status quo. I'm making it. I use the word like a mediocre life approach to life, not with any being derogatory about that, but just settling. And what am I just, oh my gosh, and this goes against every grain of who I am, is when we settle for less than what we can experience. I'm not saying you have to be a maniac and go after everything and change up everything all the time. But look, if you're getting that nudge I talked about earlier, and as I did in corporate America, I was in some pretty lucrative, pretty big positions, leading teams as an executive in corporate America. But I got the tap there too, Andrea. I was like, is this it? Is this all there is? And am I going to spend another 20 plus years just replaying that same video every day?
Mm,
For me, the answer was no, I can't. So I decided to contribute in a different way and start my professional development company and really never look back. But I think what it takes to make those kind of changes is the ability to assess who you are. And if certainty and comfort and routine are important for you, look, that's great. And that might
Mhm,
make a lot of sense for individuals listening who want to just stay, kind of get comfortable and have the certainty. Then there's nothing wrong with that. There's no better or
mhm.
worse. But for a lot of people, maybe in that late starters club, they probably felt that nudge and they're getting tired of ignoring it. And so
Yeah.
it's really about leverage. If you're willing to accept a certain amount of uncertainty and see where you can go, then I think that's
Mhm.
what starts it. That's what starts or makes the genesis of big moves in your life.
Yeah, for sure. I think you gotta pay attention to that tap, especially if you hear it over and over. It's just such a it's a huge thing because it's the universe telling you, "You need to look at this because it keeps showing up in your life." So, for
Right.
sure, I think that's so great. So, what do you think, though, it actually like, how do you get through the fear of committing to that leap into that next thing? Because there's obviously with training, with a race, it may not be as high as stakes, right? You until you have already started and you're out there, you're a mile in on the swim, you gotta get back. So you're already doing that, but
Really good to
hopefully
do.
yeah, your training has helped you with that. But like how about a fear for making this big change and how do you move past that?
Yeah. Great question. And it is very real, isn't it? It's the fear
Mm,
that I believe really holds us back. And
mhm,
when we anchor to or really listen to that voice, the voice of fear or the voice of concern, I think it's important to say, where's that coming from? Is that truly my voice, my higher being?
mhm, mhm.
Or is that maybe, and everyone probably is familiar with the idea of our ego, is that little nagging voice on your shoulder that says, play small, don't do it.
Yeah,
Everyone's gonna laugh
yeah,
at you. What if you fail? We have
yeah.
those, and we all have them. And I think just being aware, hey, it's there. It could be something that drives my decisions moving forward, or I can right size that voice
Right.
here. Now, and I'm a huge fan, Andrea, of reality testing. You
Mm,
want to make sure that you do what you can to mitigate any of the risks that go along with making a big change. So
mhm,
having your peer group or your advisory group or your coach or friends or whoever it is to really say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Can you tell me if I'm missing something? One thing I would suggest is make sure you don't go out to everybody and say that, because even people with the best intentions, really looking out for you, will offer this opportunity for you to play small. They know the risks that might be involved with what you're thinking, and they want you to not have to experience the potential of failure. Without the potential
mhm.
of failure, then there's no juice around the joy of really having tried something you didn't know if you could do and find out you could. And now on the other side of that, life is so much more fun.
I love that. I love that. That's so true because once you like level up to that new thing, once you've completed the triathlon, then you're like, what's next? Maybe then you can go for the Ironman. Or once you started your own business or gotten some clients, then what's next? You can grow even bigger and take bigger risks and realize that you are able to handle it. So I love that. I love that. What has been a moment in your journey where you started and I keep going back to starting your own business because I do love those kinds of I love the competitions too. I love starting competitions and starting that training, but I also love the stories of people who are starting a business too. Where what has been a moment in your business where you ran into a roadblock and got around it and what was something that was an obstacle there for you?
Right. Yeah. Cause they will show up. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
test metal and test your commitment and all those things. And so looking at those things as they arise as exactly that. Okay, I see what's happening. And
Yeah.
this is my tester. It's not always going to be
Yeah.
super easy. Like a career change is a big thing.
Yeah.
And I admire people who can. Let's consider like a postal delivery person who does the same
Mhm.
thing every day. They do their thing. They walk the route. They drop the mail, and they probably find those individuals who have that kind of routine and enjoy that probably have other ways they're experiencing and expressing themselves in life. So
Mhm.
I just want to stress no right or wrong. There's no better or
Yeah.
wrong. But if you're feeling like, hey, I want to try something new, just realize I believe we're all 8-year olds walking around trapped in adult bodies.
Mhm.
What I mean by that is that we have stories we've been telling ourselves about what we're good at, what we're not good at, what we're capable of. That third grade teacher says, good thing you're good at working with knowing people and having good friends because you're terrible at science. And that goes into your head. And all of a sudden, if you're not careful, you're terrible at science for the rest of your life because you haven't
Mhm.
changed or challenged the stories you picked up.
Mhm. Mhm.
The challenges that showed up for me as I started it, as I mentioned, I was at pretty lucrative positions. Let's see, I had an older son in college. I had 2 younger kids that I was responsible for. My wife wasn't working, and I had some financial backing because I bet a lot of people who think about career change are thinking, if only I had 2 years worth of savings, then I
Mhm.
could.
Yeah.
And that could be that thing that holds you back or gives you that little bit of an out.
Mm.
We find those
Yeah.
that's oh, I would do that, but if only. And
Uh-huh.
there again, that's that tester is wait a minute, this is not it. I can go do this. Remember, if you don't go, you don't know. And
Yeah.
so if you stay in that thing because you don't think you have everything lined up yet, then unfortunately, you might get to the end of the road and say, be that person in the rocking chairs. Darn it, I didn't
Yeah.
experience this beautiful thing of life to the
Mhm.
fullest. For me, yeah, definitely had some financial ups and downs going from "Whoop" to when you start saying more, Uh, but it all works out. And I think it's that keeping your eye on the ultimate outcome you have. And hopefully for many, that's going to be serving people, just like you, Andrea, that one of the goals is just to be able to serve as many people as you can. And to do
Mhm.
that, sometimes you got to get out of those skinny branches.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I love that. That's definitely would have been a very scary time to start a new business. You've got college payments, but at the same time, if there's never a perfect time, right? There's never a perfect time. And if you're waiting for the perfect time, it might never comes. It's all perfect. That's great. And now what I love too is that you are now transitioning to doing just you had the coaching business and the leadership coaching that you were doing, but now you're transitioning into doing just keynotes and focusing not just keynotes, but focusing your business on keynotes. And tell us a little bit about what that's like. What are you doing to pivot a little bit into and lean into that part of your business a little bit more?
Yeah, I've been a board certified coach for many years in the executive leadership kind of branch of coaching.
Mhm.
The thing about coaching is I think you know us. Turns out we bring ourselves to work. So even though I'm an executive coach, we end up working through whatever might be hindering someone from having the kind of joy and success they'd like to have.
Mm.
And it's been great. I'll always have some clients. But what I really like is the idea of being able to touch the lives of as many people as I can. As one to one is great, but one to many opens the door for more impact. And it's joyful, speaker and performer you are, and you know how it's fun, it's enjoyable to be out really interacting and seeing what's happening in the world for other people. So that's where I've
Yeah.
decided to go now. And
Yeah.
uh, so it's been great. And my primary keynote speech is called The Game You Must Win, and it's really about that internal tug of war between coming from fear or coming from a platform of strength. And we have that
Mhm.
choice every day. So how do we some tools in there about how do we make sure we're coming from a place of strength and not coming from a place of fear where we'll be called to play smaller and have smaller impact than we would otherwise.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I love that. I love that. It's so great. And I think that that also plays into what you've done with your competitions too, coming from a place of strength and hoping and just pushing yourself into new spaces there. I think that that trickles down and feeds into our lives. So I think it's all so synergistic with that, with our business and the activities we do outside of work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's,
You have been an executive coach for a long time, and are there other fear we've talked about fear a little bit as keeping people stuck, but are there other obstacles that you see keep people stuck and keep people from making big changes or doing the things that are tapping them on the shoulders? What other things come into play?
I think for me, what was really tough to overcome is what I talked a little bit about before. I think many of your viewers and listeners will be able to relate. And that is, it's just it's a path of least resistance to stay on the where you're going on the path you're
Mhm,
on.
mhm.
I was fascinated to learn that the space shuttle that back when we had that, and we're going on to do the space shuttle when up in orbit travels at a rate, catch this, of 17,500 miles an hour. And I'm like,
Oh,
wow,
wow.
that's really fast. I can't get my head around that. But what's interesting is it does so using virtually no fuel. Now, that's because of gravitational pull and you're in an orbit, how all that stuff goes. It doesn't, but that's a huge rate of speed. But to change course just a little bit requires 4,000 liters of liquid fuel per second.
Oh, wow.
Now, I know nothing about liquid fuel, nor do I want to, but 4,000 liters of liquid anything per second is a lot, right?
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
it takes tremendous effort just to take that space shuttle and change its course, even 2 degrees.
Mhm.
Probably the metaphor is probably not lost on you. Yes, it's easy for us to stay. We can move right along
Yeah,
on the path we're on. But for
yeah.
humans, it takes a lot to make that small change, to change our course. So of course it's
Mhm.
easy. I felt it. My gosh, people thought I was nuts when I left my corporate job. It's so hard to get there. How are you doing this? So I think it's the voices in our head. It's just the idea that, you know what, it's easier to stay on the path we're on. And
Yeah.
again, if people who are listening and watching, don't if that's what you're called to do, there's that's fine. There's no better, no worse. The
Mm,
beauty of life is we all get to experience it in our own way. But I have to say this, if part of it what's happening here is you're just settling because you don't want to put that energy in to make that little change that can deliver you a whole different result,
mhm.
keep listening to the Late Starters Club podcast because it's gonna be good information and kinda maybe be that little nudge you need from time to stay on the course of changing course.
Yeah. 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 That's amazing. Just I've never even heard that about the space shuttle, but, like, it is, there's just a lot of I think there's also, like, societal pressure, there's pressure within our families, our friends, and you might be in a group of people who are all in that same space, and to make a change feels really challenging, and, yeah, I 4,000 liters of fuel, that's a lot. I don't know, does that translate into, like, cookies or something? Can we is that our fuel? We get to
Yeah, a lot of
we need
cookies, sure.
a lot of cookies, a lot of cookies.
Well, I think the question is a good one. Like, look, it's not always easy. And so using your own power of thought, your own power of the words that you choose. I'm a ridiculous optimist. I know that about me. And look, it's just some of us are that way, some aren't. What I realize is like when I prepare for a race, I've got a new mantra now that I write to myself every time. It's really, look, there are going to be times during that race, and there's going to be times during any change anybody else makes that I'm going to feel invincible. I'm going to feel strong. I'm going to feel on point, that everything's going great. And there's going to be times during that race or whatever this other path change is where I'm going to feel terrified and I'm going to feel not great and I'm going to want to
Mhm,
quit. So being aware, even though if you're an optimist like me and you might be able to say, no, it's all going to be great, being aware that having a reality test around that is really valuable so that when
mhm,
the hard times come, you're not knocked off center.
mhm.
They will. It's
Right.
not a trajectory of ease.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's such a great metaphor for any big change or anything that you're trying to do is that just realizing that this is just a down moment. It's a rough time. We'll get through it and there'll be a good time or a high or where you're feeling on top of the world on the other side of that. So that
Right.
definitely is so true. So
Mm,
true.
yeah.
Love it. Love it. So this is a great segue into you talked about that as a mantra. I also love to have our guests share that one of their favorite quotes or inspirational sayings because I'm just such a quote junkie and I just love all of that. So I'd love to hear what your favorite quote or motivational saying is, and if you could share that with us.
Yeah, it's wow, what a tough question because, like you, I love
No,
quotes. I mean, I think
so many.
whether it's Eleanor Roosevelt or any of the others that are out there who just were so prolific in the
Uh,
things they came up with. But I guess I'm going to choose this one, and it's a little longer, so I'll hold it up and read it. And this is by Walter Wintel, who wrote really a lot of books back in kind of the turn of the last century, not the 1900s to 2000s, but the
mm,
1800s to 1900s.
mm,
Okay, if you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win, but you think you can't, it's almost certain you won't. If you think you'll lose, you've lost. For in this world we find success begins with a person's will. It's all in your state of mind. So that's one
uh,
that I chose for you today because it's just like,
ugh, I love it.
yeah,
I love it.
it was a,
Yeah.
he's a good one. If you haven't read Walter Wintel's work, it's a good way.
Okay. Nice. Nice. And I love when these quotes come from just so long ago and they're so like still so valid today. It just shows that we still struggle with the same things, the same issues and our challenges in our the way we think and just it's been through the ages. We have to just keep honing our mind and honing our attitude and bringing that those winning thoughts to our everyday life. So I love that.
Yeah, and supporting each other in that same.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Will, I would love to have you share, like, where people can find you, where people can find more about your keynotes that you offer, and we'll have these in the show notes, but just
Okay.
I'd love to hear more about that.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah. As I mentioned, there's a lot of different ways that I've shown up as a professional development maniac. But where I am now is well, really two things. So my book, which I think you can probably see here, is called
Yeah.
"You Got This: The Five Self-Coaching Keys You Need to Live Boldly and Accomplish Anything." It's available on Amazon. It's available as an audiobook. Hey, it might be a resource that would be beneficial, especially if you're in that okay, I'm going to start taking that walk into the cross that line between the known and the unknown. This might be a helpful resource for you. So that would be
Yeah.
one. The keynote that I mentioned earlier, the game you must win, is really available for people who want to inspire their team, whether that's within a corporate world or a small startup, sales conferences, association conferences. Everyone's a member of an association, right, of some kind.
Mhm.
Most people are.
Yeah.
Sometimes they wanna have a really good start to their event, and that's where I come in, typically as the keynote speaker, unless it's if they're looking for celebrity, George Bush, or who knows, then that's not me. But if you're looking for a surprise and delight, good time, let's get everybody going and get some ideas and some tactics in place, and I'd be honored if I could come serve you in that way.
Yeah, that's awesome, that's awesome, and yes, I met Will through the National Speakers Association Colorado chapter here, and he's just great, so I just highly recommend connecting with him, and if you need any type of keynote or if you're or need that type of inspiration, connect with him, so thank you, Will, so much for inspiring our listeners. Hopefully, we'll get people out there doing Ironmans or at least triathlons.
We all have our own Iron Man, whatever it happens to look
Yeah.
like, but maybe
Yeah.
this one may not be, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much.
Great. Okay. See you later. Bye, everybody.
Hope that was helpful and make sure you grab the free guide, Top Tools for Late Starters, on the website at latestartersclub.com. And let's turn dreaming into doing.